Faisal Kareem Kundi Saab, our members of parliament, distinguished colleagues, and I see some international guests sitting around this room, organizers, Asfar and his team, partners. Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. So the topic today that we have, or the theme of the conference that we have, is navigating the unknown. And in today's world, there are many unknowns that look towards us, whether it's climate vulnerability, economic volatility, geopolitical uncertainty. But one thing that is directly concerned with me, and you could say that sometimes keeps us up at night, is the emerging technology that is coming our way. The global paradigm shift towards technological development, how technology is actually seeping and creeping into every single aspect of our life. So today, when we talk about IT, when we talk about connectivity, when we talk about technology, we're not just talking about the tech industry or the software houses. We're actually talking about agriculture. We're talking about health. We're talking about education. We're talking about commerce. We're talking about your average your manufacturing, your average labor. You're talking about your everyday life communication, your society that is being transformed and shifted towards technology. Whether it's the security paradigm, whether it's the economic landscape, it is all taking a rapid shift towards a world that is coming our way with not just. So we've actually gone past the digital world, and now we're entering what we see as an intelligent world. So in the digital world, I would say that we were looking at technology as one of the greatest equalizers. But today, with emerging tech, with artificial intelligence, quantum computing, if we're unable to keep up pace with the world, it could actually become the fastest polarizer. So what does the leadership in today's world then entail? I would say, amongst the other traditional characteristics that we talk about, adoption, the power to adopt and adopt technology and adapt to the changes, is one critical facet of the leadership today. The second most critical facet of leadership is agility. How agile are we? And the third most critical aspect of leadership that we see today is collaboration. How well can we collaborate? How well can we work together, gel as teams? Because like I said, technology is cross-cutting. We can no longer work in silos. It's a transnational phenomena. We need to have a global mindset. So as we navigate the unknown, the characteristics of leadership are also changing. And are we ready to take on this challenge is the question that we all need to ask ourselves as leaders in our respective sectors, organizations, and for us as government. As far as Pakistan goes, I'm going to very briefly touch upon a few things. I'm not going to go into an exhaustive list of everything that's being done. But there are a couple of things that I feel would be pertinent for all of you to know at this point. When we talk about adaptation and agility and our readiness to embrace change, I'm very proud that one of the first directives that I got after becoming a minister for IT and telecom from the Honorable Prime Minister was actually to come up with a digital transformation plan. And one of the groundbreaking legislations that will probably go in the history for the country was done after extensive work, back and forth, consultations, was the Digital Nation Pakistan Act 2025 that was passed this year. Digital Nation Pakistan Act actually enables Pakistan and provides that requisite policy foundation to transform Pakistan digitally in 3 verticals: digital economy, digital society, and digital governance. I'm not going to go into the details of what the 3 mean, but on a very high level, digital economy is essentially a lot of what Amit just spoke about, looking at how can we have more inclusive economy, how can we use technology to ensure that the gender divide is filled, how can we have an economy which is cashless, how can we ensure that digital payments are our go-to method of payment, whether we're a consumer, a retailer, a wholesaler, a business person. How do we, and what are those key enablers that are required to do so? So connectivity, A, obviously lies at the bottom of any digital or transformation that we talk about. B is having an enablement device, which is a smartphone, a laptop, a tablet. And C is that literacy, to be able to have that confidence and ability to process through the digital economy that's coming our way. When you talk about the digital society is, in a very nutshell, what we're looking at is our ability to provide and ensure, and I don't want to go into too much detail, but the crux of the Digital Nation Pakistan Act is essentially for all of you to have a digital identity. And whether you are an individual, a private individual, a business, or a persona. So if I am a federal minister, I would have an identity of myself as Shaza, as a person, and my persona identity as the federal minister. And if I own a business, maybe a business identity, right? So how do we create those digital identities? Once those digital identities are created, the end goal is that every citizen should be able to interact amongst yourselves with the institutions, whether private or public, through your simple mobile phone. So you have a digital vault where all your documentation is with you. No need to get into lines, get things verified, et cetera, et cetera. And secondly, is where we also kind of overlap with digital governance, is that all your citizen services provided by the government are available to you digitally on your handsets. So this is the national digital transformation that we're talking about. थोड़ा सा अगर हम उसकी डिटेल में जाएं तो we're looking towards making a Pakistan stack, digital, the data exchange rails. The idea is that every data needs to talk to each other. So for example, if we're, one gap that was identified, because Honorable Prime Minister is directly leading and personally overseeing the digitization of FBR. So one gap that was identified was that FBR does not get the information, for example, when you buy a car. And that should not be the case. So running a simple Excel formula showed us that how many people bought cars in the previous year but were either not filers or did not pay taxes. So in this day and age, this is something which is unacceptable. So the Pakistan stack, the data exchange layer, all of that, what it intends to do is to consolidate data. You buy a car, you register a business, you buy land, you do all of these things. Relevant authorities, relevant organizations need to know that very relevant data. This does not mean that FBR is going to start getting your health data or your doctor is going to start getting your excise data. It's a very, very carefully curated, and it's not something new. Pakistan कोई पहले दफ़ा ये चीज़ नहीं करने जा रहा. Singapore, Saudi, UAE, Estonia, you look at any developed country, and even now developing countries, they're at a significantly advanced stage of having a digital identity and digital stacks. So that's one thing, that's one key takeaway that I want you to take from my talk today, is that Pakistan is embarking on a very challenging yet very exciting journey of national digital transformation. So that's one thing. And that's one, I would say, vertical of what I need to do. The second part is obviously to support the industry. How do we support the industry? Two things. One, the business environment in the country, ease of doing business. And second is the supply side, where at least for the tech industry, human resource and investment in human capital is something which is critical. And over the next 3 years, the numbers that we've given to Honorable Prime Minister are to at least run around 3 million low-tech, high-tech, medium-tech courses to ensure that more and more young people are enabled with employable skills. Every year, around 2.5 million people enter the workforce. That's a big number to cater for. But again, we're trying to leverage the power of technology to ensure that more and more people are skilled and enabled once they enter the workforce. As far as ease of doing business is concerned, we're very confident that, like any other developed country, the Pakistan stack that I just spoke about is again going to be a key enabler and will unlock those opportunities. For Islamabad, for instance, we're running a pilot project called Smart Islamabad. The idea is to have a super app for Islamabad where businesses should be able to eventually, not right now, simply register themselves without having to knock multiple offices and doors. A business facilitation center is being set up in the center of Islamabad. Again, we were on a visit to China last year, and Shenzhen had this one-stop shop for business facilitation. And before we could actually board the plane, Honorable Prime Minister left 3 of us back to ensure that we learned from Shenzhen how they've been able to do that and to be able to replicate it in Pakistan. And now it's almost completed within a few months and should be functional within the next weeks or a month maybe. So a business facilitation center where you go as a citizen to register a business, or not just register, but any concern regarding a business. And all offices are available under one roof, so you don't have to hop from office to office and don't have to go through that hassle. The third thing that we're trying to support the industry with is infrastructure. So we have around 250, plan to open 250 e-Rozgar centers under public-private partnership. We're giving interest-free loans to private sector to be able to establish these co-working spaces. We convert existing buildings into technology parks, enabling them with internet facility and basic power backups and the basic facilities that tech companies require. We're almost on the completion of Islamabad IT Park. We hope to inaugurate it by 14th of August. The next is the Karachi IT Park, and we're in the process of finalizing a proposal for an additional IT park in South Punjab. We run national incubation centers. We've incubated over 1,300 startups to date. Some big names that you see today started from the national incubation centers, and we're very proud that we were able to contribute to the startup ecosystem overall in the country. I'm not going to go into the list of those names, but these small initiatives, last year we ran, Honorable Prime Minister's direction, a National Innovation Award. 3 winners of the National Innovation Award who got 2 million rupees support from the government of Pakistan ended up securing investments in Shark Tank. 2 of them went on to get international recognitions, including at DCO. So these little supporting mechanisms, holding hands of young people, innovative people, at a point where there is usually capital constraint, capacity constraint, really helps us go a long way. We don't look at this as a public sector spending. We look at it as public sector investment in our young people that gives us dividends many folds and very soon. Spending on young people, investing in youth and human capital, it gives you probably the best ROI that you can ask for. So that's one of the primary top concerns of the Prime Minister, employable, productive skills that we have to focus on. So these are just a few things that I wanted to talk to you about, how we as a ministry and government are trying to support the sector and support the country and other institutions within the country, the government institutions, to digitally transform and to keep up pace with the world. This, I would say, is the adoption and adaptation part that we're looking at. Agility is something that the government is not very good with. So we have some structures that we have to run within, we have rules, we have accountability measures, we have processes that we have to follow. And we do feel sometimes that it poses a constraint and becomes a bottleneck in providing public service. But once again, we're very hopeful. I'll just give you one example. When we came in the government, within that month, the Prime Minister had to take a trip to Saudi Arabia. And there were promises of investment coming from Saudi Arabia. And the visit went so well that within a week, a Saudi delegation of over 100 people visited Pakistan. And this was probably, the ministers were themselves saying this is probably the first time in the history that we've had to work on Eid. So it was Eid and they came right after Eid, so they were working throughout Eid as well. One thing, after their visit, one thing that we collectively as ministers and ministries identified was that why have we in the past failed to secure significant investments? What we identified was a human resource constraint in being able to formulate bankable feasibilities. So do we as a public sector or as individual ministries have that capacity? No, we did not. And why did we not have it? So when the Prime Minister asked and when we tried to assess the situation, we realized that the salary structure in the government is such that we're unable to secure the kind of human resource that is required at that level. So if you want to, acquire a $500 million investment or a $100 million investment, you have to have that kind of human resource that is able to make that very, very effective proposal for that to materialize. Within 2 days, the Prime Minister actually set up a complete structure where we could hire people, a different scale altogether, under higher wages within 3 days to ensure that the ministerial capacity is up to the mark. So that's the agility that we're talking about, the decision-making power that we're talking about that is required in today's day and age. So with all of these things happening, we're very confident about our future. The last thing that I spoke about was collaborations. Needless to say, over the last 1 year, we've seen multiple a stabilization of our foreign relations, visits coming in, heads of countries, but also the international outlook that we have. As Ministry of IT alone, we've sponsored our SMEs of tech industry in multiple international events. So whether it was It's GITEX. It was GITEX Global just happened in Dubai last year, and Pakistan was named as the tech destination of the world there. We got an award. We're very proud of that. Web Summit Qatar, GDC for the gaming industry in California. GITEX Africa is happening right now. MWC Barcelona happened for telecom. So the idea is to really support these young SMEs to go across the world and showcase what we have as Pakistan. The return on this investment, and I see COP sub sitting here, the return on investment for this particular case is, for every dollar that we spend, correct me if I'm wrong, is $49? Yeah, so it's $49, right? So every dollar that you spend on marketing the country, on sending your people, on showcasing Pakistan across the world, every dollar gives back $49. That's the ROI that we're talking about. With the limited budgets that we have of a few hundred million rupees, we have a sales business to export Pakistan's services and products. And we have a goal of $25 billion. That's the budget gap that we're talking about. Those are the kind of constraints that we work with. But we understand the complexity within the financial sector, within the macroeconomic structure that's there, but we're doing it, and we will, inshallah, be successful. Last thing that I want to talk about is that Pakistan is hosting, and that's also an invitation to all the esteemed guests sitting here. On the 28th and 29th of April, we're hosting the Digital Foreign Direct Investment Summit. And it's going to be the first of its kind in Pakistan, and it's going to be an annual event. We're doing it in partnership with the Digital Cooperation Organization of Saudi Arabia. We're expecting over 300 international participants. And this is an open invitation. Asfa, you are already aware of it. So everyone's most welcome to join us. Once again, COP Seb sitting here is responsible, so he will see how you can be invited. So finally, looking at an unknown future, we're not afraid of it. We have a bold vision. We have a youth bulge, which is an asset. We're trying to empower it, so we have an empowered youth. We're looking at inclusive policies and enabling environment. And lastly, a global outlook. Putting all of this together, we're very hopeful, and of course, working with all of you sitting in this room today, we're very, very hopeful that we will be able to navigate this unknown future that's coming our way. But needless to say, we will all have to work together. Constructive criticism, good suggestions are always welcome. To the industry, and even beyond that, Federal Minister for Planning is here. Any complication that comes your way as private sector, we're always here to resolve that. It's a commitment from the Prime Minister. It is a commitment that government has no business doing business. We're trying to roll back the government. We're trying to right-size the government. And it is absolute clarity that private sector has to lead the growth of this country. And this is where Yusuf Saab's point come in, that with the booms and busts, this is the only way to break that cycle. We have to have a sustainable growth model with private sector leading from the front and taking the lead and helping us navigate through this path. Thank you very much.